Hey, Jeannie,
Yeah, Bruce.
who's our guest on the Energy Nerd Show this morning?
This morning we have Jun Yao. I'm just so excited to hear what we're going to talk about.
Good morning, Jun Yao.
Morning, Bruce and Jeannie. Thanks for the invitation.
What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about kind of cool technology. It's called air generator, Aerogen for short, which means that we can capture electricity from the air.
So, how does that work?
All right, I'm going to tell you a short story about why we started to think about that. I think we all like electricity produced from, for example, sunlight or wind. Because they are the so-called clean energies that does not produce carbon dioxide and impose environmental threats, like the fossil fuels. But energy from the sunlight or wind can be still limited in the sense that they can be interrupted by time or location. For example, we cannot get them right in the evening or in a non-windy day. There actually is a much more readily accessible energy source, which is literally 24/7 continuous everywhere. That is our air. More precisely, that is the humidity contained in the air. We actually have a very long history of knowing that. For example, in the thunderstorm, the lightning actually is produced by the air humidity. One bolt of lightning is estimated to contain 1 billion joule of electricity. And each year there are billions of lightnings happening all around the world. So if we multiply these two numbers, that's going to give us energy of 1 billion joule of electricity. Now, how big is that number? That's actually close to the annual electricity consumption by all the US households. This really means that the air actually is a very large source of clean electricity. Now, the trouble is that we have no way to capture that. Now we have invented this device. It's called, as I said before, air generator, or Aerogen for short, which now can constantly capture the charge from the air, actually more precisely the water in the air, to produce electricity. So on the slides, I actually show a short video that the prototype Aerogen is connected to a voltmeter, which measures the voltage. So you can see that from the reading, it produces a sustained voltage reading of around 500 millivolt or 0.5 volt. Now we can increase this reading voltage by connecting many devices together, just like we do with batteries in the Tesla car. The difference is that a battery needs to be charged, and its charge will be used up, and we're going to charge it again, right? The Aerogen actually constantly charges itself in the air, right, automatically. So that's the beauty of that. And this kind of device, in terms of structure, actually is also very easy. It's very simple. It's only a thin film, right, sandwiched between two electrodes, top and bottom electrodes. The top electrode is relatively small, so that the entire film can be exposed to the air, or actually the humidity in the air, so that it can constantly capture the charge from the air. Now, of course, the amazing part is this thin film, right? This thin film is made from millions, billions of tiny wires, right? Each having the size about 10,000 times smaller than the size of a human hair. Usually they are called nanowires. These nanowires are not made by us, all right? They actually are made by a type of bacteria. It's called a geobacter, which initially live in the river mud. They use these type of nanowires as a kind of small-scale cable to flow electricity. So which means that they use them to communicate with the environment or with its own species. So that means these nanowires are very effective in terms of collecting or conducting charge in the water environment, because the bacteria live in the water, right? So that also means that they are very effective in taking charge from water. So that is really the key property we had harness for this kind of Aerogen technology to capture the electricity in the water from air. I think in the end, it's also worthwhile to mention that these bacteria, they live on the so-called renewable feedstocks, which means that the material we use in this technology actually is green. It does not produce, for example, pollution or the so-called e-waste like what we usually have in conventional electronics. So in that sense, the Aerogen device actually is even a better, or we call it even a greener technology, in the sense that both the energy generation and the material production processes are, friendly to environments. So I will stop here. I'm sure that you have a bunch of questions to ask, and I hope that I can address.
There is so much to love about this. So the example from getting the technology right from nature is awesome. The fact that it's constant, and everywhere and renewable is great. And I have a most basic question. And I'm from Texas. And when I go from Dallas to Houston, my hair just expands like crazy. And so does this technology work better in a humid place, or have you noticed any of that kind of difference?
It does depend on the humidity. Like a solar cell, right? It depends on the intensity in the sunlight. So that's the same analogy. So yes, indeed, it works better in a more humid environment. So Texas, I actually came from Texas. I got my PhD in Texas. I know how it's feeling in the Texas. Probably works better in Texas if it's a humid environment. But we have tested it. It actually works across a wide range of humidity, from, for example, 20% relative humidity, way up to 100% humidity. To give an idea, even the Sahara Desert, on average, has a 25% humidity across the year. So which means that, this device literally can be used anywhere on us.
I'm wondering about the scale. Like, it seems like getting electricity out of the air is amazing, right? Other than lightning, it's like, wow, that's like magic in a way. It seems like there must be a catch or maybe limitations. Like, is it, how many of these would it take to power my computer or my electric bike or something? Is it kind of commercially viable, or?
I think that's a great question. So in terms of working principle, we don't see any limit in terms of, scaled it up. And we actually have tested it. If you put multiple devices together, the power will linearly increase. So that's really like a battery, right? That's, as I said before, that's how we can run a Tesla car. We put many of them together. So there is no intrinsic limit in that. But in terms of practical implementation, we probably still needed to address certain kind of details. For example, bacteria is really tiny, right? Small. They live in a kind of wild environment. And currently, we can sort of reproduce that environment in a lab environment, but which means that the volume actually is relatively small. So we can make a small prototype device. But imagine you wanted to scale it up. A lab facility is not enough. We need a huge tank to grow these bacteria, to harvest decent amount of material to start with. So that's one technique issue that we needed to address, and how we're going to scale up the material production, right? And of course, the second is, how we can cleverly put them together. For example, a solar panel, it's essentially planar technology. All we need is that we find enough space, all right? Then we lay down all those plates. Humidity actually is a 3D technology. They sort of diffusing into the 3D space. So which means that in principle, in order to increase the power volume, we needed to stack them up layer by layer into the 3D space. That's also the beauty of this technology, because it's not limited by the space. So in the future, we can save the space footprint by going into the vertical direction. That's how we, accommodate more people in the city, right? We build up. Again, that's the engineering challenge. How we gonna cleverly layer by layer these Aerogen devices into 3D space to collect more charge.
Thanks for being on the show.
All right, thank you, Bruce, Jeannie.